In the news this week, abolishing stamp duty to boost home ownership. One Nation WA unveils its major policy in the fight for the balance of power. A WA News exclusive.
Nuclear policy, AUKUS jobs and youth unemployment. Labor's Canning candidate Jarrad Goold takes aim at Andrew Hastie. Police take action against offensive words and graffiti symbols across Perth to curb racial tensions. And later, Dr Andrew Miller's comment.
This is The Evening News with Ivan Loom and Maliva Thorne.
Good evening. The state election campaign is officially underway with Pauline Hanson's One Nation WA announcing they'll push to abolish stamp duty tax to help West Aussies own a home. This comes as other smaller parties such as the Greens fight for the balance of power in the upper house. Paige Reid has the exclusive details.
Pauline Hanson's One Nation WA have announced their policy for the upcoming election. WA State Leader Rob Caddy says the party will eliminate stamp duty on houses if re-elected.
There's a lot of young people are struggling to get into housing in WA and all around Australia, and we think that stamp duty is something we shouldn't be putting onto housing, especially given the climate we're in and that the people are trying to get into houses and they can't.
Under the new One Nation's plan, stamp duty will be exempt for WA homebuyers who hold an Australian citizenship. Foreign homebuyers will face an increase in stamp duty to offset the costs. Caddy says One Nation doesn't believe young people around the state are being given a fair go at owning a house and something needs to change. One Nation feels pretty confident going into the election and One Nation's candidate are excited to hit the road and talk to the community. Caddy says Labor has done nothing for most areas around the state and have blown out their budget by almost 400% on some projects such as the Metronet.
And now they're out there throwing money left, right and centre, making promises everywhere, which, yes, we're doing well. Mining's booming and it's a lot of money coming in.
On the other side of the spectrum, the Greens push for public transport to be free permanently, more social housing and meet climate change targets by 2030. Greens WA leader Dr Brad Pettit says his party is aiming for the balance in the upper house.
The changes to the upper house mean that we will go from it just being me, which we had the last 4 years, where highly likely we'll get 4, maybe even more, 5 or 6. And that will mean the balance of power if we get those here.
He also expects One Nation to be elected into the upper house. Paige Reid, WAMN News.
Labor's candidate for Canning, Jarrad Goold, has come out fighting in his first major interview, focusing solely on nuclear power, WA defence jobs and solutions to youth unemployment in Perth South. In candid moments, he accused incumbent Liberal MP Andrew Hastie of having relentless negativity and holding on to a default brand of weird conservatism, as the federal election looms closer.
Jarrad, thank you very much for joining us this week.
Thank you for having me.
I want to ask you by saying that following your announcements, that you've got quite a few things that you want to get off your chest, and that's why you're here today.
That's right.
You have a few things you want to talk about. You got defence, you got nuclear, you got youth unemployment. These things are not being touched by media yet with any interviews or any encounters with you. Let me start with saying that defence industry, you're saying that your opponent has been negative? In what way?
Yeah, so my opponent positions himself as being the all-knowing person when it comes to the defence industry. And what I'll say is this: we saw throughout the entire last Liberal government that there were a number of announcements made. They're very good at saying they're going to do things, but not very good at delivering them. I think that's where we see the biggest contrast between a Liberal and a Labor government. Under the Liberals, every defence project that WA tendered for went to South Australia. Now that's changed since we've got the Albanese Labor government in. We now have the servicing of the Virginia-class fleet in Rockingham, and we've also got AUKUS going to be based out of Henderson. And it's such a significant project for WA. I don't think people fully appreciate it yet. When it's fully up and running, the Henderson project will mean that the defence industry in Western Australia is our second biggest industry after mining. Now, what's there to talk down about that? We're talking about a massive amount of money coming into our region, which means a massive amount of jobs. Now, I appreciate we're talking about Henderson, we're talking about Rockingham, which isn't strictly speaking in Canning, but every day we've already got people making the commute from Canning into Henderson, into Rockingham to undertake those type of jobs, and it's only going to expand. So what this means is better paying jobs, for more people in Canning. It's a positive story and it's something we need to be talking about.
You're saying that he has been negative in what way?
Well, first of all, he's whinging about how much money is being spent in the short term. He's talking about there's $127 million which has been allocated, because before you actually start building a project of such significance, you've got to know what you're doing, what you need, and why you're doing it. So that money's being spent to ask all the right questions before we just start throwing money into a black hole. So he's whinging that there's not enough money being spent, but I don't think Mr Hastie actually understands that planning is an important part of delivering. And I don't think he understands, because when he was in government, he didn't actually deliver anything.
You said the word black hole. Is this a black hole or not a black hole?
No, I'm saying if you don't do the forward planning, that's what you're destined for. You've got to plan. Otherwise, you can't just walk into one of the biggest projects Western Australia's ever seen and just hope for the best. You've got to do the planning, and that's exactly what the Albanese Labor government's doing.
Is AUKUS the right thing to do?
Well, that's a very big question. I mean, I'm running a local campaign for the people of Canning. It is not my job right now to sit here and discuss massive foreign affairs policy. That's what the Albanese government has determined the right thing. It's been a bipartisan approach to AUKUS, and I support it.
What about nuclear?
Well, nuclear is a very different issue. I mean, we're talking about here nuclear power. Okay. Nuclear power in Australia is a brand new industry. When we're hearing the Liberals propose nuclear power, what we're not hearing about is this. Who's going to train these nuclear physicists? Where are they coming from? Where are the parts for these nuclear facilities coming from? Who's going to build them? What timeline is it going to be? What is the cost? The costings, this is how disrespectful the Liberal Party under Pete Dutton and Andrew Hastie have been. When they finally came kicking and screaming to release their costings, what did those costings not do? They did not include the cost of a nuclear power plant, which they'd proposed to build in Collie. So how can you say, oh, we've got this great national plan for nuclear power, when you're not even going to cost one of the key facilities in that project in Western Australia?
So for the record, you're saying no to nuclear energy?
No to nuclear energy in Australia, because it doesn't suit our needs. Any energy solution you have needs to be tailored to the local market and the local environment. Nuclear doesn't make sense for Australia in 2025.
State government, during the election campaign, the Cook government saying, all right, if we are re-elected, we're going to build even more renewables on that plot of land where currently the Collie power plant is. Do you think that makes Mr Dutton's nuclear plan for Western Australia obsolete?
Well, I think calling Peter Dutton's suggestion a plan is giving him far too much credit. It is a thought bubble that is uncosted as far as Western Australia goes. And I need to make this very clear, because it'll come to another point, which is I'm talking about employment for the people of Canning. But in terms of talking about nuclear power specifically, and if it's redundant, so I know you're talking about what the state government's announced is they're going to put a battery in Collie, because frankly the challenges with renewable energy aren't so much around generation. We've got the Freo doctor, we know the wind blows. We've got sun for days. It's what have we got, another 35-degree day today.
But what about the community opposition who doesn't like to see wind farms on the shore of on Bunbury?
Yeah, so and as I'll just finish, so the issue really is storage, and we see that being addressed now with all these new battery technology being put in place, one which has been announced for Collie. I'm really glad you brought up wind farms, and again it comes back to what an incredible scare campaign the Liberal Party have been running. So they would have you believe that the Prime Minister is going to come along and personally install wind turbines in your living room. That is not what has ever been proposed.
But my question precisely was talk about, sorry to interrupt, but I'm talking about those people who are concerned about those wind farms on the shoreline.
Absolutely. People in Canning really care about their local environment, and they should. Not just because it's great to have, great to look at, it's great to go for a swim in clean water, it's great to breathe clean air, but also it's absolutely crucial to the economy, particularly for the Peel region. Tourism is one of the big industries there. But as I say, it comes back to this scare campaign. So the major wind farm near the region, it's not in Canning, it's just to the south, the Mile Up offshore wind farm zone. Now that project is going to be 30 kilometres offshore. You're talking about something that's not actually visible from the shoreline. You're talking about wind turbines that are spaced far enough apart for recreational fishers to still go fishing in between them. It's a very low impact form of energy generation. But this is when I come to one of the key issues which I'm very passionate about and why I've put my hand up to run for Canning. It's around employment. So that mile-up offshore wind farm, when it's fully operational, generate enough energy to support all the homes and businesses in the southwest. But more than that, you're talking about 7,000 jobs during construction and 3,500 jobs on an ongoing basis. Now, I find it disgraceful that in Mandurah particularly, which is the main population centre of Canning, there has been decades of issues with youth unemployment. And that issue has persisted regardless of who's been in government.
And you're saying that that will be the answer for youth employment, which we're about to talk about right now before we finish.
The answer to youth employment is to champion local jobs and local businesses. And when there's an opportunity for investment in the region, historic investment in the region, that's something the local member should be championing, not running a ridiculous scare campaign against.
Is there a target that the Albanese government has, or a percentage that your government has? Let's say if Albanese government wins the election, will there be a promise saying we want to see youth unemployment drop by how many percent? Or how many jobs created specifically for people that are below age 35? I
don't think a particular target will be set, but what we can say with absolute confidence is that historic investment in defence industries, historic investment in green technology, and also in addition to what I've just mentioned with the wind farm and the defence industries, they're also talking about making the southwest a technology and manufacturing hub. A combination of all those factors will give our young people opportunity to get long-term, well-paying jobs and importantly stay in the region. Because this is the thing, so many of our young people, when they want an opportunity, they need to leave. They need to leave Canning because the opportunities just aren't there. Well, I say, let's fight for those opportunities to come into the region, and that's exactly what's going to happen under an Albanese Labor government.
Do you have any challenges, mate, for Andrew Hastie?
Challenges?
Yeah.
I challenge him to just stop following his own ideology blindly and actually fight for the jobs of people in the area. Actually fight for your community. Actually go out there and speak to community groups and listen to what they have to say. When there's an opportunity, instead of just automatically going to your default brand of weird conservatism, actually listen and see if you can contribute. Because I'm frankly, like so many people in Canning, are just tired of his relentless negativity. It's time to build, it's time to be constructive and get things done for your community.
Two men faced court this week after police carried out a wide-ranging investigation looking into a number of alleged crimes in which anti-Semitic graffiti has been sprayed painted on several properties in Perth. Police allege that between the hours of 6:30 at night on the 1st of February this year and 7:30 in the morning on the 2nd of February, those who are accused spray painted words and symbols that are anti-Semitic on a number of property types. The words and symbols were spray painted on bus stops, signage and walls in the Dalkeith, Nedlands and Dianella areas. According to police, the State Security Investigation Group led a task force to find out who was behind the graffiti. The task force quickly found a variety of leads. Two men were arrested after search warrants to search houses in Beechborough and Dianella were carried out. Both suspects, aged 27 years old, are facing numerous charges. They appeared in court this week.
The state Liberals are promising potential nursing students $20,000 to study and work in Western Australia if they are elected in the upcoming state election. The party's policy states that nursing students will receive $12,500 during their studies and an additional $7,500 if they work for a minimum of 2 years in public hospitals in WA. Liberal leader Libby Medden believes this initiative will attract 2,000 more nurses to our state and expects it will oversubscribe if it rolls out.
This is about priorities. This is about ensuring that frontline workers are a priority. They have not been a priority under Roger Cook. The latest figures point to that. Only the WA Liberals are committed to ensuring that Western Australia is the most attractive place to become a nurse.
The Cook Labor government commits to include wine and spirit bottles in the Containers for Change expansion if elected. Currently, most plastic and glass bottles, along with drink cartons, cans and pouches between 150 millilitres and 3 litres, are accepted for a 10-cent refund. An expansion of the program could see an additional 200 million containers become eligible for refund each year. WA Premier Roger Cook says the Containers for Change program is a great win for the environment, local jobs and community groups and charities.
But you see, Western Australians are voting for Containers for Change with their feet. It's an incredibly popular program and a really important part of protecting the environment, providing not-for-profits with an opportunity to fundraise, and of course making sure that we do our best to continue to just drive great economic opportunities within the state.
And now here is Dr. Andrew Miller with his weekly medical and news commentary as the state government enters caretaker mode ahead of the WA election.
Hi, thanks for your time. The upcoming election in Western Australia is going to be closely watched for a number of reasons, both inside and outside of the state. Firstly, because there's an interesting dynamic going on within the parties themselves. The Liberals, of course, reduced to a rump in the Parliament, and lots of new time people trying to grab seats in what will be an inevitable swing away from the Labor government. The Labor government itself is going to be trying to contain the damage to a respectable level so that the Premier, Roger Cook, can say, well, it was bound to swing a bit, but we were always going to lose some seats. But the rise of independents will be interesting to see if many of those manage to get a foothold in the West Australian Parliament as people look for alternatives to the big two or the big three parties. Looking into health specifically, the interesting thing is going to be to see whether the public pay much attention to the lack of delivery as opposed to promises. Both parties in the past have made big promises that have just not been delivered. There's quite a list of them that the State Labor Party have announced funding for and then re-announced and again re-announced recently, particularly in the Kimberley. So whether they'll be held to account for that or whether other more distant dynamics will come into play, we're not sure. The Liberals have got to be a little bit nervous about the direction that the Trump presidency is going, because to the degree that their brand is identified with an anti-woke element or a enough's enough with looking after the minorities and there's too much bureaucracy element, it'll be interesting to see if there's any pushback at all in that regard. So I think Australians quite rightly expect from both parties that they will have effective universal health care. There are cracks appearing in that, both at a state level and a Medicare level. So we'll drill down a little bit more in the coming weeks as to what both parties, both the major parties, are offering in regard to your right to health care. Thanks for your time.
That was Dr. Andrew Miller. And now here's what's coming up on 6 News tonight.
Thanks guys, the top stories we're following here on 6 News. The Liberals gained the seat of Paran in Melbourne's inner city from the Greens, marking a significant boost for new opposition leader Brad Batson. Hamas releases 3 more Israeli hostages in exchange for 183 Palestinian detainees and prisoners as part of the ongoing ceasefire deal in Gaza. And Donald Trump ends Joe Biden's access to classified information by revoking his security clearance and stopping his daily intelligence briefings. You can watch live 24/7 on our YouTube channel. For now though guys, it's back to you.
Thank you very much. Now, speaking of politics, the state election campaign is underway.
Yes, that's right. And we've got 4 weeks to go before polling day, and we endeavour to bring you every twist, every turn, live and uncut on the WAMN News social media pages every day with press conferences and, of course, all the other tidbits and pictures.
And we will have all of that on our website, wmnnews.com.au.
And don't forget to subscribe to the WAMN Extra News Club to support independent local journalism. Full details on wmnnews.com.au/news/extra. From Paige, Peter, Melly, myself, wish you good health, good night. See you next Sunday.
Thanks for watching.